Long live the evil empire. The evil empire is dead, and it has just simply moved west.
We are, of course, going to talk about Junior Caminero's heroic home run to win the lidom title, and it's our second show of the week. So it's time for the good, the bad, the Uggla. We'll do that at the end. But Jake, let us begin with the opener and the New York Yankees.
This week, important people employed by the New York Yankees opened their mouths and said some stuff. Now, to say that Hal Steinbrenner is a Yankees employee is kind of misleading because he is the owner. But he had a sit-down interview on Yes Network, a.k.a. State TV. And Aaron Boone, the skipper, whose contract is up at the end of the year, he also had a little bit of chatter on the radio. But we'll begin with Steinbrenner. What in these clips of the Yankees Moneybag scion stood out to you?
So I think his comments on the Dodgers we're going to get to in a second. That's, I think, certainly the part that got a lot of people's attention. But to me, let's first focus on, let's get where they think they are as a team out of the way. Him and Aaron Boone. It's like, what did we learn from this? Because these are people that get to make the decisions about how the Yankees are going to look going into 2025. And
you're never going to believe this. You're never going to believe this. They're optimistic.
They're optimistic, right?
Regarding their outlook. In fact, Steinbrenner said that he thinks the Yankees right now are better than they were a year ago. Someone is sipping on that Paul Goldschmidt bounce back.
Well, he quite explicitly is, as of course, he was asked, all right, how did you react to Soto? What do you do from there? And he said, direct quote, I think Bellinger and Goldschmidt are going to make up for a good deal of Juan Soto's offense. Okay, so you see how they're starting to view this offseason. You see that he said about Bellinger specifically that Aaron Judge was a huge part of them wanting to get Cody Bellinger. So that's a nice little insight there. He made a comment about Aaron Judge now playing more right field and how he might not actually be that happy about it because Aaron Judge probably takes pride in the fact that he can play center field as large as he is. But again, I think he'll be fine there. I don't think he's going to be too upset about that, especially since his friend Cody Bellinger is now on the team. He said he thinks that Jason Dominguez is the left fielder. Hal Steinbrenner said that. Aaron Boone also had comments saying that, we view Dominguez as the left fielder. And this is interesting because, Dominguez's defense was why he was not playing over Alex Verdugo at the end of last season. And also part of the allure of Jason Dominguez, this super prospect, is that he is this center fielder, right? That was kind of the selling point. But if they view him in left, that is interesting for a few reasons. So those are and Aaron Boone also saying that he views Jazz at second base and that they still believe in LeMahieu and, Cabrera and whatever at third base. So those are some of the roster things that we got. Do any of those, as someone who's going to watch the Yankees a lot this year, do any of those things stand out before we get to the big picture comments?
Two thoughts. Believing in DJ LeMahieu is like believing that there are aliens on Mars. Like, maybe there are.
Yeah.
But all evidence that we've gathered thus far points towards there not being sophisticated life forms on the red planet that we can interact with, right? And maybe DJ LeMahieu turns the clock back, but you can't enter camp relying on that. You just can't. Now, they're going to give him every shot to win the job, and if he's healthy, maybe he's okay. But LeMahieu is over the hill. The other thing that stood out to me is the comment that Bellinger and Goldschmidt combined will make up for part of Juan Soto's production. Jordan, if you and I lifted a sofa, would that be more or less impressive than if just you lifted a sofa?
Right. I mean, I think what Hal is trying to get at is that the point is that the sofa needs to be lifted, and he is not as concerned about how it gets lifted. What we are saying is we are not as convinced that the sofa will be lifted.
Right. Paul Goldschmidt's back is maybe not in the best position to lift said sofa.
Yeah.
Look, he's the owner of the Yankees. He has to spin the 2025 team in a positive light. They are still really good. They're still
are,
good. Like,
yep.
This is all fine. Like, I don't give him any stick for this.
Nope.
It's just not true. Like, it's just not true. Like, you don't have Juan Soto. And you can't go back and watch what that gentleman did in all of 2024 and in the postseason single-handedly winning game 5.
All the way to
right?
the end. Yeah.
And say that this team is better. It's just not true. But you have to send that message internally.
Yeah.
Because it's not as if Hal Steinbrenner says, yeah, I think the 2024 team is better. Like, and you show up to camp as a Yankee, you're like, the hell, dude? Like, why am I even trying?
Yeah. So it's fine. I have no issue with that.
There was, however, an unforgivable blunder. An unforgivable blunder by Yankees owner Hal Steinbrenner in the sit-down interview. In discussing the strength of the bullpen, he mentioned 3 people, 3 players.
4,
he mentioned,
but 3. Yeah, the first 3 he named. He also mentioned Loizaga, but before that.
Okay. Hamilton. Ian Hamilton. Nice. Sure.
Well, hold on. Can we just pause on that? Ian Hamilton threw how many innings in the postseason this year?
He was hurt. He got hurt.
Right. Okay. So already a strange.
He's good. Ian Hamilton.
No, he's good. I'm not saying
good.
he was much better in 23 than 24, but it's already a strange one to start with. Okay.
And not where I'd start. Hamilton, Weaver, great.
What a breakout.
And Dylan.
Who's Dylan?
He means Devin Williams. Hal Steinbrenner, the owner of the Yankees, forgot or misspoke the first name of the team's second most important offseason acquisition, Devin Williams, one of the best closers in baseball, who the Yankees are going to give the 9th inning to, presumably, every time they have a lead. Hal said Dylan. Hal called him Dylan. Maybe he was doing a Chappelle bit. The top 5 relievers are Dylon, and Dylon.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think I'm as shocked that this just ended up as part of this edited interview as I am that people misspeak. We do it. We speak into microphones. We say the wrong names. Like, that happens. That's okay. But this seems like something that we should have maybe not had make it to the final cut.
If I call him John Soto, I'm sending a Slack message to our producer and
be like, hey, let's make sure we don't have me saying John Soto.
It's not a good look. It's not a good look to call him Dylan Williams.
Anyway, so doesn't seem like most people notice that, so maybe we're making too big of a deal out of it. Anyway, let's get to the real spicy stuff. All right. So Steinbrenner, Boone, they feel good about their team. That's great. We have no problem with that.
What? I can't believe it.
We had to get Steinbrenner's take on the Dodgers. That's what you do at this point in the offseason. You ask people how they feel about the Dodgers and their unbelievable, unprecedented spending. Oh, man, they are just making us all look silly. And this is what Hal Steinbrenner had to say. He said, well, quote, look, it's difficult for most of us owners to be able to do the kind of things that they're doing. Now, we'll see if it pays off. They still have to have a season relatively injury-free for it to work out for them. And it's a long season. As you know, once you get to the postseason, anything can happen. We've seen that time and time again.
I have 1,000 thoughts, but I will start here.
Go.
Starting his comment with the word look tells me he has been speaking quite a bit to Rob Manfred.
Oh.
Commissioner Rob Manfred, who whenever he's on the defensive, starts his sentences with the word look. Go back and watch any Manfred clip of him talking to the A's fans. Look, I mean, like every time it's that. And so that's what that tells me. Fascinated by that. Point two. They have to get through the season injury-free. Hey, newsflash, big guy. They just didn't do that and won the World Series, beating your ass in the World Series.
Yes, that was definitely one of my other takeaways. That was very funny. But let's get to the other premise, which is what most people, and certainly Yankees fans are kind of rolling their eyes at and laughing at, is like, we, including the Yankees, can't do what they're doing. All right. Most of us other owners to be able to do the things that they're doing, right? And the response to this being like, oh, the Yankees are broke. They're not what they used to be. All these things. I have two main takeaways about this. Okay. The first thing is that I totally understand if you're a Yankees fan and you're looking at the roster that still has DJ LeMahieu getting 500 plate appearances or whatever, and you're looking at some of the other players that are signing and you're saying, oh, but why are we stopping here? Like, we're the Yankees, we should be spending more, we should have the highest payroll. Like, I get that frustration. I totally understand, from a Yankees fan perspective, being annoyed by Hal Steinbrenner, quote unquote, crying poor, even though I don't think he's doing that. However, my other big takeaway is that Hal Steinbrenner is not my concern in the larger discourse of baseball. Hal Steinbrenner has spent plenty of money, as recently as this winter, when he gave a pitcher $200 million and has pushed his payroll to $300 million. And now, sure, he does not have the number 1 payroll. He has a number 3 or 4 payroll, right? Like, when we have these conversations about the Dodgers being bad for baseball and the problem, the imbalance, whatever, I'm not worried that the Yankees are not spending enough. So I get that people want to laugh at Hal Steinbrenner, but he's been spending. I know he's not like his dad, sure, but the Yankees have spent plenty of money, and good for them. I'm glad that they have continued to do that. When we're talking about that, I'm not worried about Hal. I'm talking about the 20 other owners who clearly have way larger holes than the Yankees do, that are not even that have accomplished far less than the Yankees have recently. Like, this team has spent a lot of money. They were just in the World Series. They have obviously almost always have a very, very good team. That's the Yankees. Okay, they're not spending as much as the Dodgers and the Mets anymore. That's fine. If you're a Yankees fan, you can be upset about that. But that does not. The Yankees are not the issue here. And inserting Hal into the discourse as like he is speaking, it's like no. They're not my worry. I'm looking at all the teams, and I'm looking at even the Red Sox and the Cubs and the teams that we know have so much more than they're actually spending. Those are the ones that bother me way more than the Yankees having only a $300 million payroll instead of a $400 million payroll.
The Yankees' behavior is not a concern. I think Hal's decision to make these comments is revealing. When he says most of us owners cannot do what the Dodgers are doing, I think he's right. Like, that is true. Most teams cannot run a $385 million payroll. All teams can run a $150 million payroll. Many teams can run a $250 million payroll that are not. But technically, he's right. Okay? But why does he feel a need to say this? It is because he is being a good teammate in his mind. The next collective bargaining agreement, okay, we're going to have negotiations about that after the 2026 season. It's going to get messy. It's going to get ugly. Hal has been and will continue to be a vocal and influential presence amongst the owner league side of things. And by walking the company line here of people can't compete with the Dodgers, like that's it. Like, that's what he's doing.
No, totally.
And I think what is most compelling about that to me is how different that behavior seems from his father, George Steinbrenner, whose whole persona as Yankee owner was being the rebellious bad boy who spent money as much as he wanted and pushed the envelope, and was participating right with the league and negotiating with the union, obviously, but he was not complying at every turn, right? Much like the way the Dodgers are acting right now. And so I do think it is unfair to compare Hal to George, because there were a lot of bad things about George Steinbrenner, obviously. But I think it's notable that he's decided to go this route, right? Yeah. And I think that is what frustrates Yankee fans the most. And the idea that he is content not being the main character, not being the top spender, not being number one, because for the last freaking century, century, that's what the Yankees have been.
Yeah, that's true. And yes, you can also levy the criticism that financially, just revenue wise, the Yankees probably can afford to be at $400 million or whatever, right? And they are choosing to stay below the top line or whatever it is, and they're making those decisions. When I'm looking at people making fun of him as if he's one of the ones crying poor in the same ways that, like, lumping him in with the Cubs and the Red Sox is not fair. Like, maybe it's ridiculous that I'm out here defending Hal Steinbrenner, but that's how I feel when you compare it to other teams who seemingly have the resources and haven't accomplished anything and have clearly hamstrung themselves as organizations that should be winning way more than the Yankees currently have.
But it's about what you're doing compared to the expectations. Okay,
sure, that's fair.
And the expectations around running the Yankees is that you are number one. You are the big bad. You are the final boss.
Yep.
And my nuclear overreaction to this offseason is that the Yankees, as we knew them, are done for now. The evil empire is dead. The Yankees are not the premier, intimidating, formidable franchise in our sport anymore. That is the Dodgers. That is a fact. That reality, I'm sure, is rattling for Yankee fans of a certain age who grew up on the elixir of dominance, of impenetrability. That's scary. That's new. And I think that it is understandable that fans are frustrated with that.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like I started with, it's not. I can't blame Yankees fans with the standard being where it is, and it's the combination. It's losing Soto to the Mets, and it's the Dodgers kind of ascending to this level that we haven't really seen a roster and a spending level ascend to. And so both of those things in tandem, I think, contribute to exactly what you're describing.
So I went down a rabbit hole about the term evil empire because I think that it does a good job of describing the energy that the Yankees carried for so long. And it is similar to what the Patriots were and what the Chiefs are now, where it's like at the end of the day, more often than not, the Yankees are going to end up on top. Good article, Pinstripe Alley. This is from 2020 during the Panorama from John Griffin, kind of detailing the history of how the Yankees became known as the evil empire. So evil empire is a term, right? Starts with Star Wars. And then it bursts into the even larger American consciousness when Ronald Reagan uses it in the 80s to describe the Soviet Union. But it's not attached to the Yankees until 2002 when they beat out the Red Sox for Cuban starter Jose Contreras. Okay, this comes
not until then. Not until 2002. Shocking.
And this comes a couple days or like a week and a half after they had signed Hideki Matsui. And so this is right after the Yankees, I believe, lose in the playoffs when the Angels win the World. And it's like the Yankees are going to continue to outspend everybody, right? And Larry Lucchino, who was the president of the Red Sox, calls them the evil empire in reference to Jose Contreras, quote, "The evil empire extends its tentacles even into Latin America." It's from a New York Times article, December 25th, 2002. And what I love when I went back and read this article, this is from Murray Chass, shouts out. He says the following, and I quote, "News of the latest acquisition had baseball officials and executives of other clubs shaking their heads and muttering expletives. Most are resigned to the reality that if the Yankees want a player, they will most likely get him. But the executives still do not like that the Yankees can and will spend whatever they have to." Does that sound familiar to you at all?
I think we've said that recently, but I don't think we've said it about the Yankees.
Long live the evil empire. The evil empire is dead, and it has just simply moved west. I'm very intrigued by this, what I found here. It's just a good reminder that like people were frustrated by the Yankees in the late 90s and early 2000s with their spending. People are frustrated now with the Dodgers. Those gripes are legitimate, but the game evolves, the game changes. I hope in time we will be okay. But this is not the first time that we've been here, is all I'm saying.
No, definitely not. No, thank you for that history lesson. We are going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to talk about some moves that are well below the level of the New York Yankees, or maybe the Yankees are so broke they couldn't afford it. That's for you to decide. We'll be right back on Baseball Barbacast.
Introducing Daily Draw, the latest free-to-play game from Yahoo Sports. Daily Draw gives you a pack of 6 prediction cards every day based on the day's biggest sporting event. Download or update the Yahoo Sports app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and join the action with Daily Draw today.
And welcome back, Baseball Barbacast. Let's go around the league. Small market teams are doing stuff contrary to what the corrupt baseball media like me, not Jordan, want you to believe. Okay. There are teams out there drib and drabbing a couple coins around. Now, it is not on the level of the Dodgers or the Yankees, but these smaller teams are not going to fade into that good night. Okay. They are not waving the white flag. The Rays, Royals, Reds, they will continue to try to make the playoffs and win the World Series and provide joy for their fan bases. And over the last couple of days, they have been mighty active on the free agent market.
Let's begin with the Tampa Bay Rays. Recall earlier in the offseason, amidst an offseason of uncertainty and difficulty, of course, with their stadium, the damage is done to Tropicana Field from Hurricane Milton. They will not be playing there anytime soon, sadly.
Inspired, perhaps,
yes,
by their new abode, Steinbrenner Field. The Rays are flashing the cash.
They are. Remember that rumor. Rays have checked in on Juan Soto. Well, what would that mean? That would mean they called Scott Boras and said, "Hey, Scott, any interest in coming to play for the Rays?" And he said no. But perhaps during one of those phone calls, Scott Boras said, "I got another client, a new client that might be of interest to you." And that is Ha-Seong Kim, the shortstop who has been a defensive whiz and occasional offensive contributor for the San Diego Padres in recent seasons. Has agreed to a 2-year deal, $29 million with the Tampa Bay Rays. And yes, we are going to have to put this on the Scobo in a second. But before we do that, Jake, how do you like this as a baseball fit?
I think I like it because I don't have to watch Taylor Walls hit.
Bingo. Well, you will. You will have to watch him for probably at least another month, as Ha-Seong Kim is coming back from shoulder surgery. And this seemed to be suppressing his market fairly considerably, as he will not be ready for the start of the season. He is still only 29, and his offensive track record is interesting. His plate discipline has essentially been elite, but the question with Ha-Seong Kim really since he came over is how much power is he really going to get to? And that kind of went in the wrong direction in 2024. Now, how much of that was related to the injury, who knows? But the point is, getting shoulder surgery on his throwing side, like, will this impact his throwing? That's important if he is going to play shortstop and be an awesome defender again. And he's not going to be ready for the start of the season. So clearly they were able to get a level of discount. But shortstop has been a position of weakness, right? It was Taylor Walls. It was Jose Caballero. Walls is a great defender, but can't hit at all. Jose Caballero is better suited as like a utility guy. And so Kim can be as good of a defender as Walls and can absolutely hit a lot better than him if he's healthy and can kind of come back. He gets an opt-out after 2025 if he really does come back and, get back to the levels that we saw a couple of years ago when we thought he was trending towards getting, $100 million, which he clearly did not. So now when you look at this deal and you say, okay, he's making $13 million in 25, 16 in 2026 if he doesn't opt out, where does this kind of fall on the Scobo for you? Because I'm a little bit torn.
I think it's an L.
Okay.
I think it's an L for 2 reasons. He has to go play in a minor league stadium. And I don't think that anybody really wants to do that unless they have to. 2, Ha-Seong Kim got MVP votes in 2023. he was a 5.8 win player, according to Baseball Reference. This was at the age of 27, right? If he had hit free agency a year ago, he's getting $100 million, right? And so does a shoulder injury lose a guy that much money? Now, how much of that is Scott Boras' fault and how much of that is like random chance Ha-Seong Kim getting hurt? I just think 229 from the Rays for a guy who like was that good a year ago?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm leaning more towards draw. I think you make a strong case because of what it seemed like he was trending towards. But I also think that like getting 229 from the Rays, he is immediately the Rays' highest paid player. He will be making $13 million this year and might only play like 100 games. Like there's, especially since we don't know exactly when he's coming back, I feel like there's elements here that are still fairly impressive to have achieved this late in the offseason.
Okay.
But to your point, I don't think it's a victory by any stretch because it really did seem like even with this, I still thought he was going to get way more than this. So I'm still going to say a draw, though. I think this is a draw.
Great. Put it on the Scobo, the Scott Boras scoreboard. It is indeed a draw. Now, last thing. One of my favorite recent stories that came out on Baseball Podcast World was the Ha-Seong Kim story on Eric Hosmer's podcast, where Hosmer basically outed Kim for just ripping cigs during games. It's a hilarious clip. I highly recommend watching it.
Hey, can we hate? I mean, our hero, Mr. Cespedes, was known to do this once or twice.
My man was a walking Marlboro.
Yeah. So listen, it's probably more common than we think. But yes, I did see that story. It was very funny.
I threw in my search bar, are cigarettes expensive in Tampa Bay? And Google says, yes, cigarettes can be expensive in Tampa Bay due to Florida state tobacco taxes. In 2009, a new state tobacco tax increased the price of a pack to over $6. And convenience stores in Florida reported a 30% decrease in cigarette sales after the tax went into effect. However, buying cigarettes in multi-packs like cartons can be cheaper than buying individual packs. So Ha-Seong Kim, you're still ripping heaters.
But he's got more money to spend on cigs now. So congratulations to him. I think this could be really good stuff for Tampa here. I mean, they came into the offseason really needing a catcher, really needing a shortstop, and kind of really needing a center fielder. They're going to roll with Johnny DeLuca out there in center, or maybe Chandler Simpson, ? But I think this is a nice pickup. Let's go to Kansas City, where the Royals have awoken from their slumber. They began their offseason with a couple nifty moves, extending Michael Wacha, trading for Jonathan India. They brought back Michael Lorenzen in there at some point to kind of backfill some of the innings vacated when they traded Brady Singer for Jonathan India. And then they have just done nothing. It has been very, very quiet for Kansas City, with all due respect to the minor league deal for Kevin Biggio. Now they sign Carlos Estévez of the Philadelphia Phillies, Colorado Rockies. We've seen him on a few teams recently, Angels. And now he will join a Royals bullpen that was like pretty good, but then also not good enough by the end of the season. Of course, they made the big trade for Lucas Erceg, and you look at Lucas Erceg and you're like, well, that looks like a closer to me. But it seems like they'd rather go with more of a veteran presence here, and they get Carlos Estévez on a 2-year deal.
I like this deal a lot. I think shoring up the back end of that bullpen will be really helpful for the Royals. Their bullpen was just shaky and undermanned really all season long. They traded for Hunter Harvey, and then he immediately got hurt, which kind of forced them to overpay for Erceg. That was just kind of unfortunate. Zerp Dog, a.k.a. Angel Serpa, one of my favorite relievers in baseball. Like, there are some good pieces in this pen now, but when you get a guy like Estévez, it just bumps everybody down a ladder. So I'm a big fan of this move. Good job, Royals. 10 points to Gryffindor. However, what this team really needs is a right-handed hitting outfielder, because that's a weak unit. And that brings me to the Cincinnati Reds, who signed right-handed hitting outfielder Austin Hayes, former Oriole, brief Philly, 1 year, $5 million. He'll join that outfield mix, hit at the bottom of that lineup. A dude that the Royals probably should have gotten for this exact price. But Hayes joins Cincinnati. He'll probably be the starting everyday left fielder.
Yeah, so him again. The Reds outfield mix. The Reds position group has been difficult to project because they have so many guys that they kind of move around, like Steer. They're discussing Lux maybe playing some outfield because Matt McLean's still at second base. What's the third base situation? A lot of pieces for Terry Francona. This also comes with the report this morning that the Reds were very much trying to trade for Luis Robert and ultimately decided they couldn't get it done, and so they pivoted to Hayes, who I think is a really good bounce back candidate. I did not realize that Hayes was dealing with this like serious infection, this real issue, which it seems like completely torpedoed his Phillies tenure after that trade. I mean, he was pretty awful with them, and it seems like that was a big part of it. But obviously, there was a reason the Phillies were excited to trade for him in the first place. He has been pretty consistent with Baltimore recently, and ballpark wise, Cincinnati is a great place for him to go. And when you combine it with these other moves that the Reds just made, I mean, the fact that they were trying to trade for Robert, the fact that they also made a deal to acquire left-handed reliever Taylor Rogers, who's still very solid and making a good amount of money. They signed Wade Miley for some reason, I guess, as rotation depth. But all of this just tells me that, like, it's just a reminder that Tito ain't coming back to just manage a 70-win team, right?
Yeah.
There's flaws with this roster, but you have to imagine that Terry Francona being there has pushed this front office to not necessarily spend like crazy, but clearly invest more and be willing to kind of push it to the point where you can look at this roster and be like, all right, like I can see where this can come together in a way that in this NL Central, they can definitely compete. So the Reds have made a lot of moves in recent years where I'm always kind of like, all right. I don't usually hate them or love them, but they've stayed active. And that's my biggest takeaway is clearly not that Tito is the one, on the phones saying you got to get this guy and this guy, maybe in some cases, but clearly him being a part of this has helped push them to be a little bit more aggressive. And you have to say that they've gotten probably more improved than a lot of the other teams, certainly smaller market teams this offseason. So credit to them.
Like the Reds on the base paths, let's speed things up. It's time for turbo mode. Brief thoughts on moves that do not get headlines except on MLB trade rumors. Dylan Carlson, 1-year deal with the Baltimore Orioles. Maybe this is who Hal Steinbrenner was referring to when he said Dylan.
Oh, Dylan. We got Dylan. Yeah, Orioles got Dylan. Good for Dylan Carlson. Still only 26. Can hit lefties when he's healthy. Probably will help out in center field. Sure. Good for Dylan Carlson. I'm rooting for that guy.
I agree. Ryan Stanek back to the New York Mets on a 1-year deal. The big hoss returns, one of my favorite cats in the game. Sneaky, badass performance in the playoffs last year in the NLCS against the Dodgers, where he threw like 2 2/3 innings. And when the Mets bullpen was like him, Edwin Diaz, and me. This is good. The Mets bullpen looks pretty strong. It now has Minter
it
and
looks
Stanek.
Complete. It seems like they're done. Adding to that, again, clearly still questions on the position side, but it does seem like they've kind of filled that out there. So, and I'm happy for you because you get to keep hanging out Ryan Stanek and Jesse Winker. Speaking of relievers, Tommy Kahnle to the Detroit Tigers. Tommy Kahnle was kind of sneaky awesome this past year. I know he had that weird thing in the postseason where he threw 5 million changeups in a row.
Hey, it's a changeup.
It mostly worked. And the Tigers, it's kind of an interesting addition. You have, it's like a version of Cleveland getting Seawald, right? Where they had this great bullpen with a lot of guys you haven't really heard of, but you kind of want to bring in a veteran component there. And I think that's clearly what Tommy Kahnle is. It's another 1-year deal. I still would like to see the Tigers spend a little bit more money at this stage in their, so-called ascent out of the rebuild and towards becoming a competitive team. But you know what? Tommy Kahnle will help them. Good for him. Good for them.
Highest paid Tigers, Javi Baez, 25 mil. Alex Cobb, 15. Gleyber Torres, 15. Kenta Maeda, 10. Tommy Kahnle, 7-7. Hopefully he gets to bring his video game equipment that
I think, true. I was going to say, I think School's making more than that in ARB now, but it's close.
Correct. 10.1. So not more than Alex Cobb.
That's good.
Elias Diaz goes to the San Diego Padres All-Star Game MVP in 2023. The Padres sign a professional baseball player, raise the banner.
Yes, their first Major League free agent signing. He was on the Padres of course. But their catching situation, no bueno. So they get to keep him and say, hey, look, we spent money amidst our ownership catastrophe. So more on that in a future episode. The Marlins signed Albert Almora Jr. to a minor league deal. What has he been up to? I think he has last played in the major leagues in 2022 with the Reds. Again, he's a World Series champion. Can never take it away from him, but it's pretty much been all downhill since then. And now he is about to turn 31, and he spent all of 2024 in AAA with Arizona.
With the Diamondbacks, and he was pretty good.
It's Reno. Honestly, 787 OPS in Reno is kind of pathetic, respectfully.
So,
but
here's why this is relevant
now. So
here's why this is relevant. Okay. If he makes the team out of camp, will be the only player over the age of 30 on the Marlins roster. The only position player, excuse me. Anthony Bender is 30. But that's it.
The other notable thing is he's as Miami as it gets. I mean, I imagine this is probably a team he's maybe thought wanting to play for a while. So maybe him playing there will be a nice little homecoming.
There are just dudes on the Marlins roster I've never heard of. People
they're going to be
Liam Hicks and Javier Sonoja, respectfully.
Hey, I like both of those guys. Liam Hicks, Rule 5 pick. Don't disrespect. Albert Almora.
Not a good team.
Hey, you know what he is, Jake?
What?
The Hialeah kid. All right, moving on to Jesse Chavez with the Texas Rangers. Here's the thing, folks. He'll be back on the Braves at some point. Just be patient. It doesn't matter what ERA he has with the Rangers. He will be on the Braves. Just be patient. It's okay. It's all going to be all right. He'll make his way back there. He's 41. They're going to need him at some point this year. So we'll make it.
The Angels signing J.D. Davis, who hit fourth for the New York Yankees at one point in 2024. Does J.D. Davis hit fourth for the 2025 Los Angeles Angels? Abso-freaking-lutely.
The J.D. Davis, Tim Anderson infield. Whew. Watch out, folks. All right, that's the end of Turbo Mode. We are going to take one more break, and when we return, it's finally time to talk about Junior Caminero. We'll be right back.
And welcome back to the end of this episode of Baseball Barbacast, and it's time for a new segment that we call Holy
something we saw that made us say holy Let's begin. What are we talking about? There's only one thing to talk about, folks. On our Monday edition of Baseball Barbacast, we set the stage for the Dominican Winter League final. And hilariously, we were like, man, we had this controversy, this amazing game with Licey where the Gustavo Nunez hits a home run off Rafael Montero and forces a Game 7. Unbelievable. And then at the end of the conversation, we were like, hey, maybe Game 7 will suck, but either way, it's a Game 7 in January. Let's just enjoy it. And my God, it was somehow even better. And you didn't even have to know anything about the Dominican Winter League to have seen this clip of what happened in the top of the ninth of this deciding game. Oh my gosh, where to begin, Jake? I have so many things to say about this, but how do you want to?
Junior Caminero, who is one of the more promising young players in baseball, a player who, if he was not on the Tampa Bay Rays, would be a whole lot more famous and talked about and well-known, a player who, if he still had rookie status, would probably be like the betting leader for AL Rookie of the Year. Like, this dude is a legit guy. He hits a baseball 442 feet up over the center field wall. Tie game, top 9, 5-5, no doubter. He hoists his bat off of Neptune and pandemonium ensues. The team rushes out of the dugout and it's bedlam. Like, we've seen this, you and I have seen this before in the Dominican Winter League, but the timing of this moment in a Game 7 to essentially win the championship with one swing was magnificent. And the joy and the energy and the passion of it all, you don't even need to watch baseball to understand the holy effing S of this all. Now, there are some other points of context here that I think are important. One, Junior Caminero, earlier in the game, hit a ball maybe an inch below the center field fence. And this swing was a carbon copy of that swing with just the dial turned up another like 20 feet. The center field wall at the stadium at Estadio Quisqueya Juan Marichal, which is where both of these teams play. So it hosts 1/3 of all Dominican Winter League games, basically. Has only seen, 14 players ever?
Yes, I believe.
Go yard over this center field wall, which is 411 feet to dead center. Like the ball does not carry there, whether it's the thickness of the air or the ball itself being kind of dead or power not being prioritized in the league. Again, 14 human beings ever have gone yard over the center field wall there. The names, some of them, Ellie De La Cruz, Juan Francisco. But
Bro Mondesi is a fun one from back in the day.
Frank Howard, TBT.
Yeah. But again, this is over 70 years of history, right? This is not just like, in the last 20 years since no. This is decades and decades and decades of games at this park. And it's not like hitting it to the third deck. This is hitting it over the fence to center field, right? This is that's the wall. And if you've been there, and you don't even have to have been there, like if you watch enough games and you see the balls that are crushed to center that don't even come close, like that's really when you start to understand how impossible this is. But since he came up, this is why we talk about Junior Caminero. This is exactly what we said after he made his debut last season. His bat speed produces raw power that very, very few humans are capable of doing. He is not the biggest guy in the world, right? I mean, he's built. I mean,
bigger than us.
Looks like a big leaguer, but he doesn't look like Aaron Judge or Giancarlo Stanton or O'Neal Cruz or Shohei Ohtani, right? He just looks like a baseball player, right? But the speed with which his hands and his wrists and just the force that he produces is unlike anything. And this swing was the grand finale of a multi-week run where Junior Caminero was destroying this league. And this is another important point of context here. Obviously, the level of competition varies wildly in this league. You have kids like Junior Caminero. Now, that's it's a rarity. I mean, he was, I would guess, was one of, if not the youngest everyday player in the league over these past few seasons. But every once in a while, we saw it with Fernando Tatis a few years ago with Estrellas. We saw it with Julio. We've seen Vlad play down there. Every once in a while, you have these young players whose talent level is so immense that they truly can dominate because the level of competition is not to that level. But you also see a lot of good players who don't hit down there because there's a lot of factors that make it very difficult to produce offensively. I mean, the league OPS is like 650.
Vinny Pasquantino went down there and was awful, like terrible, horrendous, like booed off the field bad.
There are good players that suck down there, but sometimes when these guys just get on a heater, and Caminero had just one of the great postseason runs we've ever seen in this league, culminating in this moment, in this swing, in this home run, that I'll say this, Jake, you are normally Mr. Hyperbole between the two of us. Like, you've said some things where I'm like, all right, we don't have to get crazy. I'm going to do that now. Ready? I have to say, and I don't know, this isn't even a ranking, among non-walk-offs, this has to be one of the coolest home runs of all time. I mean, the number of things that were going right in this clip, when you combine the game situation, you combine the game 7, you combine who did it, you combine the fact that he did it off of, I know he's not what he used to be. Jairo Asensio is the greatest closer in league history by far. I know people don't really know who he is, that's fine. He is, like, that adds to, like, the mythical element of this, right? That you have it off of Jairo Asensio that most people maybe didn't even notice. The bat flip, the minute to run around the bases, the fact that Junior Caminero grew up an Escogido fan, the fact that he was doing it for his manager, Albert Pujols, the fact that, like, there's just, I mean, you go on and on and on and on and on. It's just one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And on top of just, like, the aesthetic home run itself, what we just mentioned, hitting it over the center field wall that, only 14 people have done in 70 years of history. Well,
breaking the scoreboard.
Oh my God, thank you for mentioning it. It literally broke the scoreboard. Like, you can see it hit the scoreboard and the scoreboard goes black. I'm sure I'm forgetting some of the details, but it's just overwhelming the number of cool things about this homer. And that's why this doesn't get better than this. It's so cool. Again, in the non-walk-off division, I can't think of many home runs that were cooler than this. I guess like Jose Bautista's, bat flip is one that stands out as just coolest that I've ever seen. And this is right way up there.
It's one of the best baseball highlights of all time.
Yeah. It's that simple. And by the way, like it could be for Junior Caminero, who hopefully has a long, amazing major league career ahead of him. Like it could be the start of the Junior Caminero story. Like it could be that.
It could, and also it can't get better than this because it's like
I know. This is the other thing. This is the last point on this. Okay. And let's just get this out of the way. I understand because this home run, mashed its way into the mainstream.
Crossed over.
Where you have people that have never watched a Winter League game, and that's fine. It's awesome. That's great. We want this. We want more people to see these clips. It doesn't matter if they understand any of the context. People, as we mentioned, you don't even have to understand baseball to appreciate this minute of action, right? But this happens often when Winter League highlights break through and people say, oh, if only we could have this. It's like, listen, this is what it is. That's great. We have great moments in Major League Baseball. The Major League Baseball postseason is great. Let's not pretend like this is remotely possible in any Major League park in May on an afternoon, because it's not, and it doesn't need to be. That's fine, right? And the other thing is, when you mentioned Junior Caminero can't get any better for him, I'm sure he wants to win a World Series with the Rays, of course, right? What these games mean to these people is so much more than basically 95% of any major leaguer playing in any major league game ever, right? It's not that major leaguers don't care about trying to win the World Series, but when you consider the people, like the players that are playing in these games, the range of players, right? You have guys like Rafael Montero, a great example, who ends up getting the save, getting the redemption, getting the final out, right? The guy's making $12 million. The guy he doesn't need to do this. He could just sit on his couch and then show up to camp with the Astros and just collect his check. No, he wants to. Gene Segura's made over $100 million. You think he still needs to be doing this? Like, these people love this sport, this league, these teams more than we can possibly conceive of, and more than major leaguers can even come close to. And that's awesome. We can't pretend like that's really possible here to the same extent, and that's okay. We just got to meet them where they are and celebrate and kind of elevate these moments where they actually naturally happen.
You can't just copy and paste this. I'm not even saying, like, first of all, the context of this video, right? If Matt Wallner goes yard in June against the Guardians, like, he's not going to do this, nor should he, right? Now, if someone in Major League Baseball hit a home run in the top of the ninth of a tie game in Game 7 of the World Series, I assume that they would probably celebrate it sufficiently. Well, not this much, but that's okay. Hey, now, my point is, the energy and the passion and the culture of Dominican baseball and Latin American baseball as a whole, but I'm just specifically talking about Dominican baseball right here, has moved our game in the States, this sport, forward from a cultural perspective of encouraging players to emote on the field so much over the last 20 years, right? That is an enormous impact. But it starts down there and it filters its way back up through here. Like, in my mind, I'm thinking of when Tatis was a rookie and he had all the Padres doing the Estrellas, like, on base celebration, right? Like, it's not as simple as saying, I wish MLB was like this. We want MLB to be more like this.
Yes.
I think is a better way to think
That's a great way to put it. It's so much more important that it's moving us in that direction than even dreaming of replicating a moment like this. Because also, this is singular.
People who see this and you're like, try that in my town and you're getting a fastball to the ear. You are a massive loser. An enormous dweeb. A total geezer. Okay? That's like saying, if you
I've said this.
Make coffee on the moon, like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not.
I've said this about every reply like that to every Bat Flip video. It's just like, man, like, if you watch these things and you're upset, I can't help you. Anyway, Junior Caminero, we love you. Congratulations. And
congratulations to Escogido. Didn't even talk about the last play of the game, which was winning run on second, tying run on third, sinking line drive to right field, full extension sliding catch from Socrates Burrito. It was great. I am just so happy that more people are watching this. It's awesome. It's great. It is winter baseball that brings the energy and the warmth and makes us appreciate the sport even more. So this was just so good. But you know what else was good? Quite a bit this week, which means it's time for our weekly jamboree of the good, the bad, and the Uggla. One thing good, one thing bad, and one thing that reminds us of Dan Uggla, weird, odd, bizarre. Mr. Shusterman, please begin.
I don't know. I was going to do even more lidom stuff, but I'm going to save my Caribbean series thing for Uggla. And I'm going to do a very simple one because we haven't talked about this move yet. The Dodgers signed Kirby Yates. And I'm just looking at this roster. And boy, I don't know if you've pulled up the Dodgers roster resource page, but this Dodgers bullpen's looking pretty good. And maybe my good this week is just like, do people realize how good Kirby Yates was last year? Because he was better than Tanner Scott. I think that's the funniest part is when you give Tanner Scott one of the biggest contracts ever for a reliever, and then you also get Kirby Yates. Like it's getting pretty goofy down there. And I like that on the projected bullpen on the roster resource page, it lists 4 closers. It lists Kopech, Treinen, Yates, and Scott. It's like, yeah, man, that's a pretty good place to be. So Dodgers, good. There you go.
Bad though for friend of the show, Brett Honeywell, and his chances for
yeah, he'll find his way back there, just like Jesse Chavez to the Braves.
Good. The MLB The Show cover, which features not 1, not 2, but 3 baseball players on it. Gunnar Henderson, Paul Skeens, and Ellie De La Cruz. This is awesome. Now, putting multiple people on a video game cover, I like this because it negates like the bad luck.
Oh, well, right. Hopefully we don't get a triple whammy here and, all 3. But no, that's a good point.
But my favorite part of the cover, okay? Favorite part of the cover is if you zoom in. Have you done this yet?
No.
Zoom all the way in, and next to Paul Skeens, there is an LSU logo, then an arrow pointing to an Indianapolis Indians logo, pointing to a Pirates logo, pointing to an NL logo. So like the NL All-Star team. The same thing with Gunnar, except it's the Norfolk Tides and then the Orioles. And the same thing with Ellie, except it's the Louisville Bats and then the Reds.
I should have had Say, man. That would have been the real move.
So just those little attentions to detail, the idea that we're starting to put more shine on the development stories of these players, that they make the cover of MLB The Show, that's so good.
I agree. I also think that I don't know if that has to do with any new features they're bringing to the game. I mean, we've readily admitted, like, we don't play the show as much as you might expect, but we appreciate what it is and that people love it. Obviously, everyone, yeah.
I got addicted to it during COVID, and then I gave it up.
Yeah, you spent a lot of time. And then it's the same thing every year. It's like, how is it not Bobby Witt Jr.? Guess what? He'll be on the cover at some point. It's going to be okay. This game's not going anywhere. He'll probably get his own cover one day, folks. It's going to be just fun. What is bad for you, Jake?
The White Sox promotional schedule.
Ooh, what could they possibly be promoting?
That is exactly my point. So often on like a giveaway schedule, there's a lot of bobbleheads. There's shirts and jerseys of various players on the team. The White Sox announced their promotional schedule earlier this week. There is not a single active player mentioned on the entire press release. A single active player. Now, this is understandable considering they just have the worst season of all time. But I just sent you the link. There's no active players. Luis Robert is not mentioned.
Well, that's fine because, as we know, they're actively trying to trade him.
Some of the highlights. Here's who's getting a bobblehead. Here's who's getting a bobblehead. Okay. Charles Comiskey, Ray Durham, Luis Aparicio, Mark Burley, Ozzie Guillen, Ken Griffey Jr. Okay. All right. This is bad. You are so bad at baseball and acquiring good baseball players.
This is like, like hardo coaches being like, you got to earn your name. The White Sox, Chris Getz is like, you got to earn your bobblehead. We're not just giving Zach DeLoach a bobblehead. We're not just crowning Kyle Teal because he was the headliner in the Crochet trade. Like, they're waiting to find out if literally any of these players are any good, which I think from that perspective, totally valid. However, if I was Jonathan Cannon, I would be a little disappointed. Yeah.
What a destructive indictment of Andrew Benintendi.
That is extremely true, especially after his second half. What a good season.
Largest contract, free agent contract in franchise history. No bobblehead.
Yeah, but I think it's also one where it's like, you don't want to remind people of that, I think.
Yeah.
So, you've already, think about it this way. You've already spent enough money on Andrew Benintendi.
Right.
So having a bobblehead producer is maybe not the move. My bad. The Pirates brought Adam Frazier back. And I don't totally understand why. So this is honestly, what's really bad is, here's a fun fact, maybe not so fun. Did you know that Adam Frazier started 14 games last year as the designated hitter for the Kansas City Royals?
Mm-hmm.
So that, again, speaks, and by the way, did not go well, as Adam Frazier last year with the Royals hit 202, 282, 294 for a 576 OPS, 63 OPS plus. And this is bad because what do the Pirates need with, where does he fit into this? They actually now have some players that should be getting some playing time at the positions that he would be playing, like Nick York, like Nick Gonzalez, et cetera, Termarr Johnson soon, hopefully. Who is this for? I'm Pirates, come on. You got Paul Skeens is out there winning every award. He's on Seth Meyers. He's maybe the best pitcher on earth. Let's get him a little more help than Adam Frazier. I know maybe he'll help in the clubhouse. We gotta be trying a little bit harder. Just a little. Just maybe Austin Hayes. Maybe no, too expensive.
What an embarrassing offseason to ride the momentum of Paul Skeens into doing freaking bupkis, signing Caleb Ferguson, Adam Frazier, Tim Meza,
trading for Spencer Horwitz.
That's it. What the hell, man? What a freaking
bad
disaster.
Bad. Bums me out. Come on, Pirates. Let's try a little bit harder. Uggla. My Uggla this week is the Japan Breeze. The what? The who? I didn't know about this until 5 days ago. And what a delight to have had this revealed to me. Junior Caminero will not be participating in the Caribbean Series because, if you're the Rays, you're giving him a call and say, hey, buddy, it doesn't get any better than this. You do not need to go to Mexico and compete for Escogido in the Caribbean Series, a annual tournament between the champions of all the winter leagues. However, who participates in each Caribbean Series does change pretty much every year. It kind of alternates. Sometimes you've got a team from Cuba there. Sometimes you've got some other teams. I think we've seen teams from Panama and Nicaragua.
You know what doesn't change? Where Japan is.
This year, there will be a team called the Japan Breeze participating. Now, why in the world would a team from Japan be participating in the Caribbean Series, which hilariously is on the west side of Mexico? Just nothing. They're really limiting the amount of Caribbean in this Caribbean Series. So you've got the team from Mexico, you've got the team from Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, and then the Japan Breeze. Why does this exist? Here's the answer. There's really two things you need to know about this team. The first is why they're being invited. I actually still don't totally know why they're being invited, but because of who's organizing it, that's really the answer. And that is Alex Ramirez. If you've never heard of Alex Ramirez is a Venezuelan legend of Japanese baseball. I mean, he's one of the greatest NPB players of all time.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
He, I think, still spends a lot of time in Japan and has basically organized a group of players from mostly like Japanese indie ball. A lot of players who've also played overseas and have played in some of these Caribbean leagues. He's organized this team of Japanese players, to be clear, but most of them who have not spent much time in NPB, to come and compete in this tournament. And he's the manager. And it is just one of the strangest things ever, but really cool. And most importantly, the only player that I've heard of on this team is the one and only Munenori Kawasaki. Legendary utility player for the Mariners, Blue Jays, and Cubs. Beloved, he of one career home run and one of the funniest personalities in our game. Kawasaki is 43 years old, and I do not know how recently he has played organized baseball, but he will be participating for this team. And I'm very excited to see how this goes, because I believe these games will be on LB Network. And I don't is this team going to lose by 50? Is this team going to win because Japanese baseball is that good? I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm excited to find out.
If you wanted to watch Munenori Kawasaki face up against Johnny Cueto in the year of our Lord 2025, then you're in luck. Jordan, by the way, the Caribbean series is being held in Mexicali, I believe.
Yes.
That is a 28-hour drive about if you're trying to reach the Gulf of Mexico, which is the
Caribbean. Yeah, no, it's a little bit.
It's real far.
It's a different situation.
But it's closer than Japan, so that's nice.
That's true. Anyway, that's as ugly as it gets. What you got?
That's so good. My Uggla is Francisco Alvarez at Amazing Day with the Mets. He was asked about his English, which is pretty good. But he said that,
especially because he's only 21, right? I mean, he's only 21 and incredibly young.
Now, as a catcher, it is both more important and easier to get good because you are just talking more, right? But his English is already pretty solid. I've interviewed him in English a couple times. It was great. But he said that he, watches American TV, English TV to improve his English. That's not new. But he was asked, what's his favorite show to get better? And he said, Peaky Blinders, which is so funny for a million reasons. One, he's literally wearing a black pinstriped jacket in this video that is very Peaky Blinders. Okay. If he shows up at camp with a Peaky Blinders haircut, oh my God, that would be the funniest thing ever. By order of the New York Mets. Last point about this. Mm-hmm. What a terrible way to learn English. Brutal. Because I, as someone who has spoken English my whole life, I need subtitles to watch Peaky Blinders. I do not understand what they're saying. So Francisco Alvarez having a British accent and talking like Tommy Shelby would be so good. It would be so good.
I mean, Tom Hardy in Peaky Blinders is still one of the best characters of all time. Television personas of all time. But yeah, I would love, I just want him to start, speaking like he's from Birmingham. I would love that.
When I was in Japan on my honeymoon, I met someone, Japanese woman, who was working, a very normal Japanese woman, who was working in a restaurant. And she spoke fluent English with an Irish accent because she studied there and has Irish family friends, and she just full Irish accent. So Francisco Alvarez speaking to reporters like he's from Birmingham in 1922, nothing better could ever happen to the sport.
Also, aren't we waiting on the Peaky Blinders movie? I think that's coming out. So hopefully he's all caught up. And when you see Francisco Alvarez in spring training, you can talk to him about Aberama Gold and whatever. All right. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Baseball Barbacast. Thank you, producer Andrew Hartz. Thank you to Hal Steinbrenner for giving us stuff to talk about. And of course, to Junior Caminero, whose bat is still airborne. You can email us at baseballbarbacast@gmail.com. We've received some incredibly kind emails recently. You folks are very nice, and we appreciate it. But we're going to end this podcast and go make a bunch more Peaky Blinders jokes. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you all next week.